No one inside the paddock expected what would unfold next. It was a moment that would change everything for him, his team, and the entire trajectory of the season. To understand the gravity of the modern MotoGP championship is to understand a sport balanced on a knife's edge, where a single millimeter of miscalculation translates into absolute chaos. As the grid formed under the heavy Mediterranean sun, the reigning world champion, Francesco Bagnaia, sat motionless on his factory Ducati. He wasn't just fighting his rivals. He was fighting the staggering weight of expectation that had been placed on his shoulders since his very first title defense. Every camera lens was trained on his visor, tracking the clinical execution that had defined his career. Yet beneath that calm expression, pressure was building fast. Behind closed doors, the paddock had become an echo chamber of whispers. Speculation emerged that the internal dynamics within the Ducati garage were reaching a boiling point, with heavy contract negotiations for the upcoming seasons creating a quiet, unsettling rift. Every point on the scoreboard mattered. But the Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya possesses a unique, terrifying trap that keeps crew chiefs awake at night. The long front straight allows these ground-effect prototypes to unleash their full engineering fury, rocket launching the grid into fifth gear at speeds approaching 300 kilometers per hour. The physical layout of Montmeló demands that the field aggressively bottleneck into a narrow, sharp right-hand opening corner before the Michelin tires have even reached their optimal operating temperature. On this particular afternoon, the track temperature fluctuated wildly, altering the mechanical grip of the front end and throwing pre-race simulations out the window. Insiders noted that the teams were operating on guesswork, altering electronics maps up until the final 3-minute board. The stage was set for a high-stakes chess match at hyperspeed, but what the paddock discovered next shocked everyone. Inside the garage, whispers began spreading that an unexpected challenger was preparing to rewrite the script of the weekend. Amidst the technological dominance of the frontline factory teams, Johann Zarco was quietly engineering a minor miracle aboard his LCR Honda. The French veteran had spent months fighting to tame the notoriously unpredictable RC213V, a machine that had developed a reputation for snapping without warning. Yet throughout the free practice and qualifying sessions, Zarco found a deceptive, fluid rhythm that defied the bike's technical limitations. He executed a jaw-dropping flying lap to secure a brilliant fifth position on the starting grid, placing himself directly into the firing line of the title contenders. Engineers within the Honda camp data-tracked his performance, uncovering that Zarco was utilizing a highly experimental aerodynamic package designed to optimize stability under hard braking. The data suggested a promising racing rhythm that gave his crew genuine reason to believe a top-5 finish, or perhaps an unbelievable podium, was well within reach. Just a few grid slots away, Luca Marini stood in silent contemplation. The analytical Italian had been working methodically to find his own breakthrough within the factory squad, focusing his strategy on a calculated, steady approach to avoid the mid-pack turbulence. In the tight pack conditions of modern Grand Prix racing, the opening lap represents an extreme psychological gauntlet. Zarco's unexpected surge to the front row created a volatile tactical dynamic. The underdog possessed the pace to disrupt the establishment, but launching an aggressive machine from the second row meant entering the first turn with zero margin for error. Yet this was only the beginning of a far bigger storm. And from that moment, nothing would ever be the same. The atmosphere turned suffocatingly tense before the main event could even establish its rhythm. As the red lights extinguished for the initial start, the pack lunged forward in a roaring wall of sound, but the collective breath of the crowd was instantly caught in their throats. On the back straight, an explosive, terrifying collision between Pedro Acosta and Alex Marquez sent carbon fiber debris showering across the asphalt, triggering an immediate red flag. The race was halted before a single lap could be logged. The sudden stoppage inflicted a severe psychological toll on the riders. They were forced to return to the pit lane, their adrenaline violently spiked and then abruptly cut short. Inside the garages, the tension was palpable as mechanics frantically scrambled to fit fresh tires and manage the heat cycles of the carbon braking discs. According to reports, several crew chiefs expressed deep anxiety over the declining tire temperatures, knowing that a second start would force the grid to be even more aggressive to secure track position. Bagnaia sat in the corner of his pit box, staring blankly at the telemetry screens, analyzing the shifting wind conditions that were now altering the braking markers at the end of the straightaway. The delay stretched on, allowing the mental fatigue to set in. When the pit lane finally reopened for a shortened race distance, the collective mentality of the grid had shifted from strategic management to pure survival instinct. The riders knew that the second launch would be a frantic, desperate scramble. However, the twist that followed would change the championship narrative entirely. Yet the real turning point happened away from the cameras, hidden within the complex laws of fluid dynamics and aerodynamic physics. As the lights went out for the second restart, 20 prototypes launched with violent intensity, a staggering display of raw horsepower contesting a single patch of real estate. Bagnaia executed a flawless start, utilizing the immense acceleration of his Ducati to close the gap on the inside line, positioning his machine perfectly to dictate the apex of Turn 1. But behind him, a massive invisible hazard was forming. When a pack of modern MotoGP bikes enters a braking zone at 300 kilometers per hour, they create a massive wake of aerodynamic turbulence, commonly referred to by engineers as dirty air. This pocket of low pressure completely nullifies the downforce generated by the intricate winglets of the pursuing motorcycles. Zarco, approaching at an incredible velocity, found himself sucked into this aerodynamic vacuum. The loss of downforce meant his front tire lacked the necessary load to bite into the tarmac, rendering his braking markers completely useless. Luca Marini, positioned directly adjacent to the French rider, was caught in the exact same pocket of restricted space. The physics of the sport had overridden human control. The three riders were tracking towards a single point of convergence at an unsustainable entry speed, their trajectories locked by forces they could no longer manipulate. It was a mathematical certainty rushing toward a chaotic resolution. What happened after that left even his closest team members stunned. A lightning-fast moment was all it took for absolute chaos to erupt. As the pack entered the hard braking area leading into the first corner, the subtle contact was instantaneous but catastrophic. Zarco's machine, carrying too much momentum from the aerodynamic pull, overshot his intended line by a fraction of a meter, brushing against the side of Marini's bike. The initial contact threw both motorcycles completely off balance, disrupting the delicate equilibrium required to trail brake into the apex. In a fraction of a second, Zarco's front end washed out entirely, low-sliding across the tarmac and transforming his machine into an unstoppable projectile. Bagnaia, who had already committed to his lean angle on the outside line, had absolutely no warning. The sliding Honda collected the factory Ducati with staggering force, dragging all three riders into the runoff area in a tangle of limbs and machinery. The scene at Turn 1 was truly terrifying. Bagnaia's Ducati was thrown off course, violently sliding across the asphalt while the remaining field coming from behind was forced to react with split-second reflexes to avoid a secondary disaster. Riders swerved off the racing line, taking to the grass and gravel to miss the scattered motorcycles. But as the dust began to settle in the gravel trap, the realization hit that this was far worse than a standard racing incident. Zarco had become tragically entangled in the rear wheel assembly of Bagnaia's sliding bike, his leg trapped as they tumbled violently through the stones. But what the Paddock discovered next shocked everyone. Inside the LCR Honda garage, the initial frustration instantly evaporated, replaced by an agonizing silence as the team watched the medical feeds. Trackside marshals moved with incredible speed to secure the area, signaling for immediate medical intervention as Zarco remained motionless in the gravel. Reports from the trackside monitors suggested a severe situation, with early rumors whispering of a potential catastrophic open fracture. Bagnaia and Marini, both shaken but largely unhurt, quickly picked themselves up from the debris. Displaying the true brotherhood of the Paddock, they bypassed their damaged machinery and ran directly toward the fallen French rider, waving frantically for the medical car to accelerate its arrival. The competitive anger of a lost race dissipated into pure human concern. The world champion's face, visible through his open visor, was a mask of shock as he watched the emergency crew stabilize his rival. The entire circuit fell into an eerie quiet, the cheering of the crowd silenced by the stark reminder of the underlying danger that governs every single second of the sport. The race continued on track, but the heartbeat of the event was entirely centered on the medical vehicle as it slowly made its way toward the circuit hospital. Yet this was only the beginning of a far bigger storm. The subsequent updates from the medical center revealed the true cost of the Turn 1 disaster. While early fears of a career-threatening injury were downplayed, the official diagnosis confirmed that Zarco had suffered a heavy setback, sustaining a fibula fracture and severe knee ligament damage that would require an intense period of recovery. For the French rider, who had shown such staggering potential during the practice sessions, the weekend ended in the sterile light of a hospital ward rather than the celebration of a podium. Upon returning to the Paddock, Bagnaia's face was a portrait of raw, unadulterated disappointment. The reigning champion spent hours in serious discussion with his technical crew watching slow-motion replays of the incident from multiple angles. The data confirmed that he was entirely blameless, a passive victim of an aerodynamic chain reaction, yet the mathematical reality was devastating. By scoring 0 points, Bagnaia had missed a golden opportunity to cement his leadership, allowing his closest championship rivals to widen the gap in the standings. The pressure was now mounting exponentially on the world champion, with the media immediately questioning whether this heavy setback would derail his mental composure for the remainder of the season. The paddock was left debating the fine line between aggressive racing and unacceptable risk. However, the twist that followed would change the championship narrative entirely. The fallout from the Catalan Grand Prix extended far beyond the immediate point deductions. That evening, an intense confrontation brewed within the Safety Commission meeting as the riders gathered to voice their collective fury. Race winner Fabio Di Giannantonio, alongside several veteran riders, led a heated argument demanding an immediate, radical overhaul of the Montmeló circuit design. The public narrative across social media platforms was a battleground of opinions, with fans debating who carried the ultimate responsibility. But inside the paddock, the focus shifted entirely to structural safety. Insiders leaked that a formal petition was being drafted to force the circuit organizers to relocate the starting grid significantly closer to the first corner, a modification designed to drastically reduce the approach speeds before the field enters the bottleneck. The incident had uncovered a fundamental flaw in the modern era of high downforce aerodynamics, proving that the current safety margins are failing to keep pace with the engineering evolution of the machinery. As the teams packed up their freight for the next round, a sense of deep unease lingered over the paddock. Bagnaia faces a monumental uphill climb to salvage his title defense. Zarco begins a grueling race against time to heal, and the sport itself must confront the unsettling reality that until the tracks are redesigned, every single start remains a high-speed gamble with destiny.